All right, so I'm going to open the recall to order the Judiciary Committee, and I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 1564. And is Representative King here, the prime sponsor?
Nope, there he is.
There we are. All right. Thank you, Representative King.
There he is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and esteemed colleagues. There's nothing I'm going to do or say that's going to change anybody's mind about the topic of transgenderism. But I'd like to just give a few moments why you should support my bill. Not necessarily in exclusion of the previous bills that we voted on, but why mine is a little different and why I hope you'll support it as well. When the governor vetoed the last quote unquote bathroom bill, I was very disheartened. But one of the arguments she gave for vetoing it was that it's unenforceable. Okay. Now I disagree with that assertion. However, taking it on face value, let's just assume she's right and that the previous bills are unenforceable. What the previous bills tried to do is they try and claw back what I would say is a little bit of rationality from otherwise already irrational laws in our statutes. And what are those irrational laws? Well, in the 2018-2019 legislative years, the term gender identity got shoehorned into already existing RSAs, dozens of them. And the problem with that is that this bad term got into our statutes, and now instead of removing the bad term, these other bills are trying to sort of write good law that kind of trumps bad law. And I think that's not the best way to go about it. My favorite bills are the ones where we remove bad code. Instead of having to write a bunch of new code and have pages and pages of new code, we just go through and get rid of the bad code. And if you look through this bill, it does look quite large, but really, it's really only scratching out two words through a lot of RSAs. And that term is gender identity. If we get rid of the term gender identity, then the issue that we've been debating for the last 4 hours largely goes away. Because then it frees up institutions and business owners and all these things from being able to regulate their bathrooms, locker rooms, sports as they see fit, and is no longer mandated from the state that they must include people that they otherwise would not include. So sometimes, you know, there's the old saying, you don't want to use a bazooka to kill a housefly. That being said, radical transgender ideology is not a housefly. It needs to be bazookaed, it needs to be swept up, and it needs to be put into the dustbin of history. This bill does that. This bill torpedoes radical transgender ideology in the state of New Hampshire. And I think any half measures are not going to solve the problem that will potentially plague our grandchildren for generations to come. I hope that you'll support this bill because this bill is the fix-it solution for what we've just been debating for the last several hours. Right. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Representative Smith.
Thank you very much. When you say bazooka, do you mean the terminology, or are you suggesting the elimination of people who claim to be transgender?
Thank you for the question. I'm referring to the ideology of transgenderism, okay? I'm not interested in harming anybody, okay? But the ideology, and the thing about it is that it's very important to understand transgenderism is not about biology, okay? It's about ideology, okay? It's about psychology, but it is not about biology.
All right. Other questions? Representative Birch and then Representative Tur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, for your testimony on your bill. I'd like to just make sure I remember earlier today, it's been a long day so far. Is it your position, generally speaking, that you oppose anti-discrimination laws in terms of age, sex, gender identity, race, color, sexual orientation, ethnic background, and the like?
Thank you for asking that question again. Yeah, so federal law has certain, anti-discrimination statutes that we're not going to be able to affect in the state of New Hampshire. I think what you're asking me is an ideological question, and ideologically speaking, I know we just talked about libertarianism a little bit ago. The libertarian position is that of freedom of association and home rules. It's my business or it's my property, and if I choose to discriminate against people, then yes, I have that right to do so. And that's actually what is being debated here. This bill doesn't bring up all the different anti-discrimination laws, but it's specifically with gender identity. And I will affirm that yes, if we remove the term gender identity from New Hampshire RSAs, it will allow for discrimination. And I believe fully that discrimination in and of itself is not a bad thing. We all discriminate all the time on many, many different items in our life. Okay, it's not evil. It's perfectly okay. And I think that it's very unfortunate that we, as a society, have given up on that, because I think that actually it would make for a better society if people had the freedom of association and corollary, the freedom of dissociation. Thank you.
Representative Tur.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for taking the question. So I wanted to focus on the way you introduced the bill, noting that it was a reaction to actually two governors' assertions that the other attempts would be unenforceable. I'm wondering, if you flip this bill over and say, that you are explicitly allowing all of the different categories being eliminated for decisions to be made based on whatever the concept that we're debating around gender and what the prohibition against discriminating against those is, it reads very differently if you said someone based on, say, the people who testified earlier on the earlier bills, if they identified, as trans or not trans, or were somewhere in the process or had different bodily features, etc., that they should be allowed to be, differentiated in terms of getting a mortgage or in terms of some of the other provisions that are being eliminated here. I guess what I'm thinking is the unenforceability is because those changes that have been debated, we're trying to insert exclusions to the provisions against discrimination, and that essentially that's what's causing the unenforceability, not the concept that all of the different types of people that we've heard from today should have the right to basically engage in all the behaviors and actions listed in your bill without differentiation, without being told that you should get the mortgage and you should not get the mortgage, for example, because of the way you look or what gender you identify as.
I assume that there's, do you agree?
I didn't hear a question there.
I am so sorry. I got a little off track, but
That's okay.
Do you see that the problems with the concept that this bill seeks to address could be eliminated if we simply allowed the law as it stands and that was passed by our previous Republican governor to stand as it is?
No, I think that it was a mistake by our previous governors to either veto certain bills or allow them. And I think that's largely because this issue really wasn't on most Americans' radar in the late 2010s, and it really got swept in there quickly. And it wasn't until we started actually experiencing the ramifications of the gender identity movement that there's been a backlash. So yes, I think that, in 2016 and before that, you didn't see these kind of problems. And once these things got in there, then yes, you're starting to see a lot of these problems. So that's why I'd like to turn back the clock about 10 years.
Other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to go back to imposing we've heard from the prime sponsor. I'm going to go back to imposing the 2-minute rule, and I'm going to recognize Representative Wade, please.
Good morning, members, or afternoon. It's been a long day. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Once again, I am Representative Alice Wade from Dover Ward 2. And I'd like to thank the previous sponsor for not hiding a single thing about what he wants. He wants discrimination back in the Granite State. He said that. I didn't even have to put words in his mouth. He said it himself. What are we doing here? Repealing all anti-discrimination protections, all of them, from transgender people. And according to him, he wants to do as many as he can get. And I'd also like to address, and it's unfortunate he's not sitting here, Representative Alexander claiming that trans people are just people with some sexual fetish for children. That is defamatory. That is not with all due respect. That is
Mr.
not.
Chair, point of order.
Yes.
I think we should keep the subject matter to the bill at hand and not speak about members of the committee.
I would like to have him point of ordered for discriminating and defaming
I hear
me,
you.
and I will speak to this bill.
Yeah, I'm
There
gonna allow
is
you to remove.
something called the gay panic defense, and that's just one particular anti-discrimination law I wanna put out there. And they had to put it into law because what people were claiming is that they killed someone, and they were claiming that it was okay that they killed someone or assaulted somebody because they were gay. That is a legal defense that people were using in court to try and get away and say, oh, it's fine, I killed them, I assaulted them, but it's fine because they're gay, because they're trans. That's the kind of discrimination that has historically happened to this community. And it's everything. Education, sexual assault, higher education,
All right, Representative, thank
pupil
you.
safety.
Your time
It's
is
everything repealed for protections for trans people. It's insane.
Questions for this witness? Representative Andrews, did you have a question? Oh, sorry. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Next, I'm going to call on Simon Amaya Price, and on deck will be Ty Thompson.
Good afternoon, committee. I hope you had a lovely lunch. My name is Simon Amaya Price, and I used to be trans. I'm quite frankly tired of listening to the same sort of people who groomed me into believing that I was a girl and tried to send me down the path of permanent sterilization, osteoporosis, adverse cardiovascular events, and testicular cancer. The same group which told me to cut off my family for not lying to me, and the same people who send me regular death threats. This group has jeered at my colleague for sharing her experience of being sexually assaulted even. How many more shootings do there need to be? How many women in prisons need to be raped by men? There were 2 pregnancies in NCI Framingham, just right across the border. How many men need to expose themselves to women in locker rooms before we understand that men who say they are women are a threat to society? Take it from somebody who left gender ideology. It is an extremist movement that we have let take over our laws, educational system, and public accommodations. Being transgender is a choice, and to the word of my friend, Representative Jonah Wheeler, the consent of one does not stand for the consent of another. Thank you. Happy to answer any and all questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir. Next, Ty
you.
Thompson, and on deck is Chris Urkel.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on deck. My name is Ty Thompson, they, them pronouns, Nottingham, New Hampshire. I think I also am grateful for the clarity of the introduction of this bill to be explicitly steeped in repealing anti-discrimination legislation with the idea that discrimination is something that we desire in our state and should be up to the individual people. I think if you look at the history of our country, it is fraught for all of the ways that it is good there's also ways that it has been fraught across times with regard to race, gender, religious practice, sexual orientation, all of the reasons that we have non-discrimination legislation to protect and include people. This has been a process from our Constitution down to include amendments that allowed for greater freedoms of people in our communities and our country. This particular legislation seeks to erase trans people from protections in the state of New Hampshire, and it is unacceptable.
Question? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have more? I didn't mean to
I just
interrupt.
needed to check.
Sure, no, that's okay.
I got off a little bit.
No problem.
I mean, these attempts to curtail visibility and access to public life have repercussions for everybody. They harm the moral foundation of our civic life and create communities operating from a place of threat rather than unity. I'm deeply fearful of these trends in New Hampshire and in our country. We stand at an intersection. We can choose to be part of a national trend of division based on fear and intentional othering, or we can ensure that New Hampshire remains a place where all people, including trans people, can live safely. I urge you to reject this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, Chris Urkel, and on deck will be Claire Abernathy.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Chris Urchel, and I'm an attorney with GLBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, and I'm here in opposition to HB 1564. I just want to talk a little bit about the history of gender identity protections in New Hampshire. It was 2018 when, as many of you will remember, Republicans had control of the House, and there was bipartisan support for passing protections for transgender people into law in New Hampshire. In 2019, the very next year, another bill was passed that was mostly a housekeeping bill that was making sure that in all the various different statutes that protect against discrimination in New Hampshire, that the change to include gender identity was also included or reflected in all of those different RSAs. Since then, there has not been any of the problems that people are afraid of. What we have seen instead is nationwide political attack on transgender people that is politically motivated, that scapegoats transgender people, that uses fear-mongering to convince people that there are problems where there are none. Transgender people do not pose a threat to anybody. Transgender people are an extremely small and vulnerable population, and there has been an outsized attack on the rights of transgender people nationwide, including from our federal government. This proposed legislation is just epitomizes what we have been seeing across the country and here in New Hampshire. It is there's no basis for repealing these protections. I mean, if you read through, why would you want to make sure that transgender people can be denied the right to buy a house, right? That's like here in the bill, but it doesn't make any sense to repeal protections that are there for a vulnerable minority. They were passed with bipartisan support just a few years ago, and transgender people here in New Hampshire do not cause harm to anybody. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Claire Abernathy, and on deck will be Nancy Brennan.
Hello again. My name is Claire Abernathy, and I'm an ambassador for Independent Women's Forum and a detransitioner. I'd like to share some of my experience, which was directly caused by the destructive ideology that this bill seeks to strike from legal enforcement in New Hampshire's law. As I described before, I was physically and sexually assaulted as a direct result of my school's non-discrimination policy, which put me in the boys' restroom and locker room as soon as I declared myself one. My genitals were irreversibly chemically disfigured and atrophied, and my healthy breasts were amputated as a result of the belief that a person's self-declared identity should take precedent over the material biological reality that humans are either male or female and one cannot become the other. I will never be able to engage in sexual activity or undergo basic medical examinations without pain and bleeding. I regularly suffer severe pain anytime my bladder is full because the tissues which make up my gynecological and urological anatomy have been irreversibly atrophied. My joints regularly dislocate and persistently ache because I was deprived of estrogen during key developmental years when my bones were still growing. I will never get the 7 years of my life, which I spent being blindly affirmed in the delusion that I could or had become male. I will never have a normal middle or high school experience, and many key experiences of my adult life will be permanently affected by the choices that were made for me by my parents, school administration, doctors, and therapists, who are operating under the belief that there was such a thing as an immutable, inherent gender identity which mattered more and should be deferred to over material reality. It is not discrimination to acknowledge that a female is female and that a male is male. It is not discrimination to acknowledge that there are circumstances in which that matters. I urge you to join me in reality and eliminate this destructive ideology from state law. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, I'm going to call on Nancy Brennan, and Sarah Terrell will be on deck.
Good afternoon. First of all, the prime sponsor introduced this bill and talked about transgenderism. The term transgenderism arises from anti-trans extremists who seek to delegitimize and dehumanize transgender people by falsely implying that being transgender is an ideology rather than an identity. So that in itself is hurtful and harmful. This is legalized discrimination. That is what he said, and there are those who are happy with that. There's a rep, and I think it's even been in the national news, who said, we want to put the worst bills forward so that all the lefties leave this state. And I think there are people in our government right now who would like to get rid of trans people any way they can. The Nazis put them in concentration camps before they started killing the Jews. He also said, Representative King said, you didn't see problems years ago. Yes, you did. I've worked on this bill since Rennie Cushing and a group decided to work on it. And we heard story after story. One, I remember a woman saying, I was having a sandwich in a restaurant and somebody came up to me and said, you have to leave. We'll pack your lunch to go. And she said, why? And she was a transgender person. And the waitress said, I'm sorry, but those people over there don't like looking at you. That's what we're going to do. I ask
Ms.
you,
Brennan, your time is up.
humankind, people, come on.
All right, questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Sarah Terrell is next, and on deck is Lynn Lippett.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the House Judiciary Committee. It's been a long day, hasn't it? My name is Sarah Terrell. I'm a lifelong resident of New Hampshire. I live in Plymouth. I'm here as a mother, respectfully urging you to vote ITL on HB 1564. HB 1564 removes gender identity from New Hampshire's non-discrimination statutes. It strips protections from transgender people in employment, housing, and public accommodations. It does not simplify the law. It removes legal protection from one specific group of people. This is not a technical amendment. This is a statement about who our laws are designed to protect. I understand some believe existing law already covers everyone equally without naming specific groups, but non-discrimination law has never worked that way. We name categories, race, sex, religion, disability, because history shows us that which groups face target discrimination. Removing gender identity does not create neutrality, it creates a gap. My 17-year-old daughter is transgender. Without this protection in statute, she could be denied housing or fired from a job, not for anything that she has done, but for who she is, with no legal recourse. My family contributes to the state. We volunteer, we support our public schools, we pay our taxes. My husband serves in local government, our son attends UNH. We are raising our children to love New Hampshire. And yet this bill tells my daughter that her place in our civil rights laws is negotiable. Civil rights statutes exist to protect people who do not have political power in a given moment. If the legislature can remove protections from one group today because it is politically convenient, no category in our civil rights laws is secure. That should concern every Granite Stater, regardless of which group they belong to. This committee is charged with upholding justice under the law. You hold real power over whether my daughter is protected by the laws of her home state or deliberately excluded from them. When you remove protections from a child, you are not being neutral. You are choosing. Please do not write my daughter out of New Hampshire law.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I respectfully urge you to vote ITL. And I
Question.
offer any of you to meet my daughter. You said some very hurtful things today, but I'd love for you to meet her so you can be more informed the next time you speak at a hearing like this.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lynn Lippett, and on deck is Eileen Sahagian.
Hi, I'm Lynn Lippett. I'm a concerned citizen and have transgender family members and friends who will be harmed by removing gender from the statute. They are not radical. Their being is not based on an ideology. It's who they are. They could lose their housing and employment without protection from discrimination. Their rights and freedom of expression will be endangered without protection from discrimination. If this bill passes, transgender people will again need to choose between expressing their true identity and possibly losing their job or their housing, among other things. Excuse me. The legislators who voted to add gender to the statute based their vote on sufficient evidence that transgender people were being discriminated against and evidence that the people of New Hampshire supported this change. The potential for discrimination hasn't changed since then, and the public, except for a small, albeit vocal minority, have increased their support for transgendered people's rights, in large part because they've gotten to know transgendered people as they've become more free to be who they are in the society. Removing protection from discrimination from transgender people is a slippery slope. I mean, who's next? Gay people, people with disabilities, women, people of color. I remember when none of these people were protected from discrimination, and it wasn't good then. I mean, people were made to feel uncomfortable by women in certain roles, by people of color in swimming pools, in restaurants. We don't want to go back there, and everyone should be protected. When you take rights away from one person, one group of people, you're affecting rights of all people. And as a cisgendered woman, I am not afraid of trans people in the bathroom. Oh, different bill. Thank you. I urge you to do the right thing and leave gender as a protected class. Everyone should be protected in New Hampshire.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, Eileen Sahagian, and on deck is Eric Cole Johnson.
Good afternoon. Eileen Sahagian here from Durham, New Hampshire, 45-year veteran teacher, and I would like your undivided attention. I told you I was a teacher. I used to say I need to see your eyes. Can you please, this is from my heart and my soul, take a moment to examine why some of you are interested in making life for trans and gender diverse people so awful. Has a trans person made your life difficult? I am almost 70 years old, and I guess maybe I get why this might be hard to understand. But have you gotten to know a trans person? Do you know what they have been through and will continue to go through, especially if some of these hard laws are passed? Please answer my question in your heart and your soul. I was a teacher for 45 years. I had the honor of working with many students who were questioning their gender and some who were trans. The struggle of these students, they were real struggles. One of my students took her life. I'm speaking for her, and I'm speaking for all my students. This legislation is un-American and cruel. Everyone deserves to have protection in our live free or die state. Short, old, tall, young, bald, thin, left-handed. Are we going to have left-handed legislation? We are all different. Thank God. I need to stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, Eric Cole Johnson. On deck will be Rosie Emick, I think. Eric Cole Johnson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the chance to speak today. My name is Eric Cole Johnson. I live in Newbury, New Hampshire, and here as an educator and parent of a transgender daughter. I recommend that you vote to ITL HB 1564. I'm going to skip over the comments I had about my work as an educator and get to my home and my family and what this means for my family. As a parent, this bill hits close to home. My daughter, now out of high school, spends her time responding to emergency calls as an EMT at her fire station, extracting people stuck in their cars after an accident, helping contain fires, and administering life-saving CPR. This is in addition to working 48 hours a week with a private ambulance company, and as she looks forward to starting the fire academy here in Concord this spring. She gives back. She helps anyone, regardless of their identity, political affiliation, or beliefs. I want her to be able to apply for future jobs, rent an apartment, and walk through life without fear of discrimination, simply because of who she is. Removing gender identity from our state statutes would take away explicit legal protections that families like mine rely on. We want the same basic fairness anyone would want for their children. Removing protections from transgender citizens tells them that they don't matter. It tells everyone that transgender citizens don't matter. They don't exist. But they do exist. It might be hard to believe that, but they do exist. And we are not training them to be transgender. They do matter.
Time is up, sir.
My daughter matters.
Right.
And I would hope that you would vote ITL on HB 1564.
Right.
Thank you all for your time and your service to the great state of New Hampshire.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next,
Thank you.
Rosie Emick, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. And then next will be Lisa Bodman.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the House Judiciary Committee. My name is Rosie Emmerich. I live in Hooksett. I have a 9-year-old trans child, and I'm here to oppose HB 1564. I'm going to tell you a story. Last year, while the healthcare ban was moving through the committee, when it still had a felony clause attached to it, my family seriously considered leaving New Hampshire. My kids were anxious. They didn't want to leave their friends, their schools, or our home. One afternoon, I was sitting on the porch with my trans daughter, and she was upset. It was one of her siblings had done something to upset her, and she had snapped back at them, and they were angry with her. And so she said that one of her siblings hated her. And I told her what most parents would say, that sometimes we're mean to each other, but that doesn't mean that we don't love each other. And she looked at me, and she said, "People who don't even know me hate me. How do I know my family isn't going to turn against me?" I want you just to take that in for a second. Some people in this room have said some absolutely horrendous, hurtful, and painful things about my 9-year-old child. And I'm noticing that none of them will look me in the eye. It's really, really important My child has never been in this room. Thankfully, she's never heard some of the things that have been said today. But she still got the message loud and clear. This type of legislation, just it being presented into the room, us having this conversation here today, sends a message. And my 9-year-old received it.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next, Lisa Bodwin, and on deck is Scott Files.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Lisa Bodwin. I urge you to read my complete testimony. I serve as the executive director of the New Hampshire Council of Churches, founded in 1945. Our ecumenical institution has 7 denominations and 300 churches across our beautiful state. We urge you to vote ITL. It is disheartening for the council to see people wielding fear and cruelty as a weapon to harm a tiny population of people protected by the United States Supreme Court under Bostock versus Clayton County in 2020. That decision made clear that discrimination against transgender people is a form of sex discrimination under federal law. New Hampshire cannot legislate in a way that places the state in direct conflict with settled federal civil rights protections. Under the Supremacy Clause, these bills invite costly litigation, legal uncertainty for schools and municipalities, and predictable harm to real people. Beyond, however, the U.S. Supremacy Clause, from the Council's lens, our supremacy is to Jesus Christ, who repeatedly taught us to love our neighbor. No exceptions. Jesus was unequivocal. In the Gospel of Matthew, he said, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." This commandment is not conditional. Love of neighbor is the central ethical demand of Christian faith. Jesus also warned religious and political leaders against using law as a tool to burden others while claiming righteousness. He condemned those who tie up heavy burdens to bear and lay them on the shoulders of others while refusing to lift a finger to help. In other words, laws that increase suffering, exclusion, or fear, especially for those already marginalized, stand in direct contradiction to Jesus' teachings. We urge you to vote ITL on this bill.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Scott Files, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and next up is Stephen Scar.
Thank you, sir. It is Files.
Files, I'm sorry.
No worries. My name is Scott Files. I'm from Somersworth. I'm here today to oppose this bill. I'm going to throw out the beginning of my written testimony because I thought I was going to have to convince the committee that this bill would be discriminatory, but that seems pretty clear that that's the intention of this bill. And therefore I'm pretty scared right now. As a transgender individual, the whole nation has come for us. And I'm just, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm just a normal guy. You know, I go to work, I go to the grocery store, I walk my dog. And I was transgender before I even knew what transgender was. It was a solution to a problem that I had. Since I've transitioned, my life has been exponentially better. I'm able to connect to my family in a way that's genuine. I'm able to support my friends. And bills like this play a part in the path that our nation is heading towards anti-transgender genocide. And I'm not saying that word flippantly. Experts from the association, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, have warned that we have surpassed and are in stages of a formal genocide. There are 10 stages, including discrimination, dehumanization, and finally extermination. the violence
Sorry, sir,
in the.
your time is up.
We're very afraid for our lives
Thank you.
currently.
Questions for this witness, Representative Birch.
Again, with respect to your testimony, I hope you understand that many people come and tell personal stories. In respect of your testimony, many people come, many people tell their personal stories, which are very hard. And regardless of what side or what bill, everyone in this committee is deeply appreciative of people who come in and do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And I apologize. I meant to be more professional in that way. Thank you.
Thank you very Stephanie Scar, Stephen Scar, I'm sorry, and then Mary Wilkie next.
Stephen Scare, Nashua. I'm here to speak in favor of this bill. What is a gender identity? The definition in our law is based on circular reasoning and stereotypes. Gender identity means a person's gender-related identity, appearance, or behavior. So, by our law, a gender identity is a gender identity. That begs the question, what is a gender identity? I've asked this and related questions hundreds of times on the street. Activists respond with irrelevant, thought-stopping cliches. Trans rights are human rights. Children know who they are. I think it's weird that you're so obsessed with other people's genital, and trans people have always existed. Or people will discuss disorders of sexual development. I've had dog poop flung at me, and someone spit in my face a few weeks ago for talking about this. What is a gender identity? There's no good answer because gender identities are imaginary. Transgender women are men, and there's no such thing as a transgender child. By enshrining gender identity into law, New Hampshire has established transgenderism as its state religion. This is a cult that preys on our most vulnerable citizens, effeminate boys, sexual assault survivors, and people with autism. It militates against the First Amendment and rights to safety and privacy. Also, if a man who claims to be a woman has the same access as other men to men's facilities and the same protections, I don't see the discrimination. So please vote ought to pass and remove this cruel nonsense from our public policy.
All right, questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Mary Wilkie is next, and on deck is Sam Hawkins.
Thank you. My name is Mary Wilkie. I'm here testifying on behalf of Kent Street Coalition and on behalf of myself in opposition to this bill. History offers countless examples of marginalized people being persecuted. And when we look back through the lens of history, the ones who did the persecuting are the ones that we now condemn. In addition to the repeal of anti-discrimination provisions, there are random acts of cruelty sprinkled in this bill. For instance, there's currently a law that protects young people from being bullied in school based on their gender identity. That would be repealed. Does somebody want them to be bullied? There's currently a law that says foster parents must treat the children in their care with respect and dignity, regardless of gender identity. This bill takes out that regardless of gender identity. But the main thrust of the bill, as others have mentioned, is to open the door to discrimination. And it's discrimination in employment, government assistance, housing, education, healthcare, lending, insurance, public accommodation, transportation, and there's more. These are our neighbors. These are your constituents. When I was a child, a woman in my neighborhood was excluded from social events because she was divorced, which offended two people in that time and place. Even as a kid, I thought that was cruel, and it ran counter to values I had learned in Sunday school. Love your neighbor as yourself, and judge not, lest you be judged. I hope similar values will guide you to stand up for the rights, liberties, and dignity of all Granite Staters and vote ITL on this bill. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next, Sam Hawkins, and on deck will be Reverend Linda Hurst.
Good afternoon.
Again, for the record, Sam Hawkins, here today representing NAMI New Hampshire in opposition to House Bill 1564. I addressed the committee earlier today discussing the harmful impacts of discrimination on community mental health, and we have now heard that this bill affirmatively intends to allow discrimination. I don't think there's enough time in my 2 minutes, or probably the entire hearing, to fully discuss all of the ramifications of this bill. So I'll instead say that passing this bill would expose Granite Staters. It would jeopardize their health, their safety, their livelihoods, and likely their lives. I think it is imperative that the committee ITL House Bill 1564.
All right, thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Reverend Linda Hurst, and on deck is Amy Teravacchia. I think I got it right. Finally.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Linda Hurst. I serve as the Transitional Associate Conference Minister of the New Hampshire Conference, United Church of Christ. Together with my colleague, the Reverend Gordon Rankin, we serve 130 churches that comprise our faith community. And I have a statement to share with you from Reverend Rankin. Members of the Judiciary Committee, as a Christian minister and as conference minister of the New Hampshire Conference of the United Church of Christ, I voice my opposition to the bill 1564 and encourage the members of this committee to oppose it as well. As an open and affirming conference of the United Church of Christ, the New Hampshire Conference has long witnessed to the theological imperative that all people are created in God's image. This is not true in spite of, but rather because of the divine being reflected in all diversity. To quote Galatians chapter 3, you are all children of God. Absolutely everyone here. The text continues that human distinctions are not the distinctions of the holy. To consider those who are transgender or non-binary or have the unique understanding of their gender identity different as reflected in the divine, well, that's like saying God considers those who are different with brown or blue or hazel eyes. We are all children of God and reflection of the divine. The impact of this bill is not about concepts, nor is it about political allegiance. It is about people. It is about real, live, breathing human beings. It is about people who are loved by their parents, their partners, their friends, and most importantly, loved and celebrated by God. This bill impacts the people who are our neighbors.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
We oppose the bill and ask you to ITL. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Amy Teravacchia, and on deck is Beth Scarra.
Good afternoon. I'm passing around written testimony. I do encourage you all to read it. I will not read it out loud to you. But I just want to highlight 3 things. Again, my name is Amy Teravacchia. I'm with 603 Equality. First, a reminder, as one of the earlier folks reminded you all, these protections were enacted with bipartisan support back in 2018. These bills and protections are widely popular within New Hampshire. Withdrawing these protections is a step backwards for civil rights. Protecting one protected class in the state protects all of us. And it benefits all Granite Staters to keep gender identity in state statutes. To remove them would be have horrible consequences across all areas of our state government and life. And then also, I again would like to remind the committee that anti-LGBTQ policies are costly and bad for the economy, in addition to being discriminatory, as we heard from the bill's sponsor. They also open us up for lawsuits, for litigations, and have a negative impact on the state's economy. So I'd like, again, welcome you to read my full testimony. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Beth Scarra, and on deck is Pasha Roberts.
Beth Scare from Nashua. I was shocked to see that HB1564 required 15 pages to list all the places where gender identity is embedded into our law. What does gender identity even mean? It's used to label feminine men and masculine women as being different and with special rights. It leads kids and vulnerable adults down to a path to destroying their bodies with hormones and having healthy body parts removed. It allows boys and men to access sports and spaces of intimate privacy that were previously exclusively for girls and women. It's actively destroying lives, destroying families, and destroying our society. Stripping it out of our law would restore sanity and protect vulnerable people who have fallen prey to gender ideology, and protect women and children who are our most vulnerable, not those who claim special rights because of an identity. How did we even get here where the rights of confused people are considered the most important, trumping all other rights and protections? Please do the right thing and vote ought to pass to strip this pernicious ideology from our law. And I speak from experience because my own family was fractured by my trans-identified niece who died from a drug overdose at 21. It destroyed her, it destroyed her family, and it fractured our relationships. This is a very destructive ideology, and she is just one very sad example of that.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Pasha Roberts. On deck is Alex Blake.
So, hello again. Hopefully last time for today. So I am Pasha Roberts. I live in Wilmette, New Hampshire, and I'm on 603 Equality and speak in opposition to HB1564. And just in terms of history, people have mentioned gender ideology as a new thing. You can find clay tablets that were buried in Samaria that basically talk about intersex and trans people. This is something as old as recorded history. This particular bill tries to perform a global search and delete on the entire body of New Hampshire law. With a broad brush, it hits 50 areas of state law. And it's difficult to imagine this kind of mass deletion being remotely acceptable for any other category in the list, like race or creed or marital status. I mean, why not remove all of them? In the early 1990s, I was looking for an apartment in Boston, and I thought I found a great one. During the tour, the owner looked me over and decided I was gay, and they would have none of that in their space. They told me outright that they didn't want me to get AIDS all over the surfaces of the apartment. So in order to protect their building, they would not rent to me. This was medically impossible, but at the time we were in an AIDS crisis, in the panic of an AIDS crisis. There wasn't much left for me to do, but just take the hit and go on. Today, we are not in an AIDS crisis, but or an AIDS panic. It's a trans panic. It's the same irrational fear that helps no one and closes the world off to be a smaller, meaner place. 1564 opens the doors to a million variations of this bias, again, across the legal landscape. We wouldn't do that for race. We shouldn't do it for gender identity. I ask you to mark this bill as inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Alex Blake, and on deck is Dork Sahigan. Dork Sahigan, yes.
Hi again, my name is Alex Blake of Bow, and I'm here to oppose 1564. I've been a lifelong ally to the LGBTQ community. That commitment came natural to me, shaped by the accepting family and community I grew up in New York. But since moving to New Hampshire, I found that being a passive ally is no longer enough. I am now called to be a protective one for a young family member I love. When he began identifying as male, I had questions. I didn't understand how someone so young could already know. But I took those questions not to him, I took them to the scientific literature. When I feel confused or uninformed, I turn to evidence. And the evidence was clear. His age and his certainty about his gender identity are both well documented and supported by research. 10 minutes of reading was all it took for me to understand and to commit to fighting for his rights. I only wish I didn't have to spend my time fighting at all, rather simply being with him. To those who would restrict his rights by attempting to erase him from the statutes, I want you to understand that what you are asking of families like ours, albeit only a small population of us. You are asking us to live in fear. You're working to segregate and exclude people who deserve nothing more or less than the rest of us have. I can only assume you are either raised to hold hatred toward this community, or you lack the willingness to examine the evidence. Either way, I feel sorry for your ignorance. We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for what this state already promised: liberty and justice for all. That is not a radical idea. It is the pledge you all took. May we please move on to something more productive than being concerned about someone's gender identity.
Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Dork Sahigian, and on deck is David Trumbull.
Hi there, I'm Dork Sahagian from Durham, New Hampshire. We're supposed to protect our citizens and protect them from discrimination of all kinds in this bill and others. This bill even supersedes the previous bills, as the sponsor indicated. For example, if you look, dress, think, and feel like a guy, you're a guy, you go to the men's room. Likewise for women. But it matters who you are now, not how you were gender identified when you were born, right? Because it matters right now. And transgender people have this really weird and rare medical condition, not ideological, it's not a choice, it's a medical condition, of having attitudes, thoughts, feelings, perspectives, and temperament of one gender while being stuck in the body of the other gender. Can you imagine how debilitating it is to go through life this way? Imagine it for yourself. What if you were stuck suddenly in the other gender? Many, including teenagers, commit suicide unable to cope with the internal conflict. This is a matter for patients and doctors, not for big government. Don't be that big government in the state of live free or die. Given that choice, we prefer to live free. So how do we enforce laws, not just one, but could be many, that control who goes in and out of bathrooms and who gets a mortgage? Do we have our wives and daughters and granddaughters lift their skirts for inspection? This bill and the previous ones are beyond absurd. They're obscene, literally. Shame on you as our legislators for even thinking about it. It's time to vote ITIL on this and move on to issues that actually matter to us as New Hampshire residents, like housing costs, taxes, and public education.
Any questions? Seeing none? Recognize David Trumbull. And on deck will be Kelly Twiss. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is David Trumbull, and I oppose this bill. First, it takes away the civil rights of transgender people. It's a good thing that transgender people will not face discrimination when they go for a job, but they'll be treated with respect and dignity. And it's a good thing that they're treated with respect when they go to buy a home, when they deal with insurance, when they have a school child who is being bullied, or they're in the foster care system. There will be really hard for people who are transgender to live in New Hampshire if you pass this bill. The second thing I'm opposed to about this bill is that, as the sponsor said, he wants to allow discrimination and disassociation. The premise of the bill is that you get to choose who has rights in New Hampshire. This goes against the idea that we are one state, that we're one community of people, that we're all New Hampshire citizens. Who will be next if we take away transgender rights? Will the next bill go back to these 20 sections and erase the word race? Will it erase sexual orientation? Will it erase disability? This fundamentally goes against us as being a state, a place where everybody is respected. I urge you to reject this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, Kelly Twiss, and on deck will be Jennifer Smith.
Hi again, folks. I oppose Bill 1564, of course. But hey, if you pass it, it'll make discrimination great again, right? Isn't that what we're all here for? You heard it out of his mouth. You heard it directly out of his mouth. And I'm not sure if any of you are co-sponsors, but you might want to consider taking your names off that bill. Because people in New Hampshire are not interested in electing individuals that legislate discrimination. This is ridiculous. Why are we even here? Even if this passes, it's going to get vetoed. If it doesn't get vetoed and it goes into law, this state will be drowning in lawsuits day one. This isn't good for anyone. Federal law will not allow this to happen. I'm not sure why you're even trying. You don't want transgender people to get houses? What is this? Is this like 1920? What are we doing? It's ridiculous. So I believe that these bills are all being written, as I said, for the explicit reason to just make it very clear to people, you are not welcome here. The people who support you and love you are not welcome here. We don't want you. We don't want your business. We want you out of this state. Because there's no other purpose. This is not going to go anywhere. It can't. It's not going to. So again, I would just urge you to vote inexpedient to legislate, but also remove your names from this. Your names are going to go down on a bill that is explicitly out of the sponsor's mouth meant to discriminate. Period. That's the purpose. Discriminate. And he'd also like to discriminate against other people, but he's starting here. We're going to start here, and then maybe we'll move somewhere else. It's just ridiculous. So I really urge you to think before voting yes on this.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Jennifer Smith, please.
Thank you again. I just want to reflect a little bit about the culture war kind of aspect of this. For most of my lifetime, the culture corresponded to this idea, in this country anyway, and in this part of this country, with this idea that you are immutably male or female from birth. And we didn't even talk about people who are intersex. We didn't want to have to deal with any of this. And I think the purpose of this bill and many of the others is to try to take us backwards, because it seemed like such a wonderful time. Lots of us suffered. I managed to make it through. Some didn't, under this, trying to figure out who the hell we were and why things were so difficult for us. And it took me to my mid-40s to finally get enough reading, talking, to feel like I knew who I was. When I finally found the courage to come out publicly, my friends remarked on how much happier I seemed. And I want to lay to rest the ideas about our being inclined to criminality. No, I've never had any interest sexually in children. When I but was with PFLAG in New Hampshire, and parents who didn't know what to make of what their children were telling them came to us. We didn't say to them, oh, your child's transgender. We said, well, you're going to have to work at figuring it out. Listen to your child, take them to some therapy, see what grows out of it. Children were leading this. They weren't being led to it. Yeah, it came out, the zeitgeist, as it's called, changed. And it came out that kids who heard that change began to feel like they could say something about it.
Thank you. Time is up. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. I don't have any other pink cards on. Whoop. Oh. Sure, come on up. Absolutely. Yep, it looks like we have a couple of people that. Yeah, Representative.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I was going to wait until after the witnesses have testified, but if we got one coming, I'll let them come up, and I'll just say this now. For the record, I just want to record that, to the best of my recollection, the statements that are being attributed to Representative King and to his testimony by several witnesses here are just blatant misrepresentations. Mr. King clearly indicated his intent, and he did not indicate that the bill was intended to enforce or to mandate discrimination. And so I think it's important that we set that straight for the record, whatever our point of view may be on the bill itself.
All right. Could you, I'm sorry. I don't think, we don't have a, so, you know, why don't you go ahead and testify, but could I ask you to just fill out a pink card and give it to Ms. Ball when you're Representative Ball, and same for the next person. So yes, could you tell us who you are, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the House Judiciary Committee. My name is Rebecca Hoskins. I'm a lifelong resident of the state, and I currently reside in Concord. I've come today to speak and urgently oppose this bill. I am going to piecemeal what I wrote a little bit because several people have made a lot of the points that I made, but I am a gender nonconforming person. I began to question my gender identity as a child. I was fortunate to grow up in a family and community that I did. I was given space to grow and explore my sexuality and gender identity. My church was also very welcoming of all LGBTQ identities. New Hampshire, the state I was born and raised in, was also the first state to legalize civil unions in 2007, going into effect in 2008 before legalizing same-sex marriage in 2010. In the first minute of 2008, on the steps of the State House, the first civil union in the state was performed by the minister of my church at the time. I couldn't have asked for better conditions to come to understand myself and ground me in a solid sense of self at a young age. I long for nothing more than to pave the way forward for those Granite Staters who come after me. In a world and a year where there is so much else that demands legislative attention, why do we keep coming back to people's identities? No harm is caused by the mentions and inclusions of gender identity in any of New Hampshire's statutes, certainly to no lawmakers in this state. It's chilling that these repeated attacks seem purposeful. The Granite Post quoted Tim Corcoran, state representative for Ware, as saying the quiet part out loud on social media. The point of Republican legislation in New Hampshire is not just to change the laws, it is to demoralize the left to encourage them to leave. Quote, I am not going anywhere. The existence of gender identities beyond male and female does not negate the genders that already exist. Many people would be harmed by the removal of references to gender identities in New Hampshire statutes, myself included. This would be opening the door and immediately testing the boundaries for further discrimination.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. Thank you. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, David Kovic, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll just say up front, this is my first time. I was told I would have 3 minutes, so maybe you could just...
Two minutes.
Yeah, I was told I would have 3 though, so I'm hoping maybe you'll just forget to look at the clock, or you misplaced my card.
No, we're gonna...
I swear it's a tight 3 minutes, but I'll try to get
We're going to enforce the 2-minute rule.
All right.
Like we have for everybody.
My name is David Kovic, and I live in Newcastle, New Hampshire. Thanks for the opportunity. I live there with my wife and my 2 kids, Izzy 11 and Sam 8, and they're amazing. 3 years ago, I never would have guessed I'd be sitting here talking to you about a bill about gender identity. I think I heard the term non-binary for the first time a year before that. And frankly, I thought the first impression was the pronouns were a little bit awkward and a little bit weird. And then our 8-year-old, in their own very poignant and insightful way, told me that they were non-binary. And just to be clear, I could not be more proud of this kid, and I could not be more proud of who they are. I love them so much. I'm inspired by them every day. They show more courage every day, more self-awareness, and more vulnerability than I think most adults I know, including myself. So why am I here today? My 8-year-old has a lot of anxiety, and he worries about very unlikely bad things happening. And we have a code that we use. I say, Sammy, whose job is it to keep you safe? And Sammy replies, it's your job, Daddy. And that puts his anxiety at ease. And that's why I'm here today, because I'm just trying to keep my kid Izzy safe. And this bill would make them much less safe. I used to be a professional mediator, so my hazard is I can't help but see the other side of arguments. So if we're talking about bathrooms as you did this morning or sports, I may disagree with 10 or 7 of you apparently, but at least I can get to a place where I see a public interest there, where I can understand how you might get to a place where you think there's something there to balance your rights against mine or my kiddos, balancing public benefit versus private harm. I'm really struggling in this case to find where the public benefit is in this bill. So either you're saying that you don't think my Izzy is more vulnerable because of who they are, or you're saying that my child doesn't deserve protection because of who they are. And either of those is a really difficult place for me to be. From discrimination, from hate, from bullying because of who they are and the pronouns they use. This bill doesn't just give people permission to discriminate, it actually endorses it because you're making an explicit choice to strip back those protections that already exist. And there's only one message that my kid will take from that. So I can't find the public benefit, but I can find the harm. We talk a lot about, no,
Thank you, sir.
please.
Your time is up.
Oh my God.
All right. Thank you. No, I'm sorry, there's no special rules here. The rule is 2 minutes. Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on HB 1564? Seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on HB 1564, and I'm going to open an executive session on HB 1564, and the chair recognizes Representative Birch for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move this be referred to interim study. Oh, ITO. That was a mistake on my part. I move ITO.
All right, I'm going to second that motion. Representative Birch, do you wish to speak to your motion? Briefly, please.
Actually not.
All right.
I think we've heard enough.
All right, anyone else wish to speak on House Bill 1564? Seeing none, the motion before us is ITL on House Bill 1564. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice Chair Mannion,
Yes.
Rep Tripp,
Yes.
Rep Andrews. Rep Andrews.
Representative Andrews?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Clerk votes yes. Rep Perez. Yes. Rep McFarland.
Yes.
Rep Scully.
Yes.
Rep Ball. Yes. Rep Birch.
Yes.
Rep Page.
Yes.
Rep Raymond. Yes. Rep Tur.
Yes.
Rep Rombo.
Yes.
Chairman Lynn.
Yes,
Did I miss anybody? I don't think I did.
I don't think,
14-0.
14-0, all right. Any objection to this being on consent? Seeing none, it'll go on consent, and Representative Birch, you're up for writing the report, okay?
Yep.
All right. All right. I'm going to close the executive session on HB 1564, and I'm going to open the hearing